Hey there, kids. It's good to see you. We are now starting Chapter 7 of the Oddmire Book 1, The Changeling. The map was simple and crude, but the landmarks inscribed near the forest edge were familiar enough. The secret path began not far from the tree where the boys had found the message. The morning sun was still hugging the horizon when they arrived at what the map implied was the head of the trail. Cole had brought with him his pocket knife. It was good and sharp, although not as sharp as it had once been. Countless sticks had been whittled to shavings by that blade. He also carried a bundle wrapped in faded yellow cloth. Their mother had indeed made marmalade tarts the night before and left them cooling on the kitchen counter. Well, Tin had been carefully writing a note that explained where they were going and telling her not to worry. Cole had stacked a half a dozen of the flaky pastries on a faded yellow dish towel and tied the whole thing up in a neat package. He held the bundle in one hand as they trod down the path. Tin had swiped a matchbox from the kitchen counter. It had only 4 matchsticks left, but he had felt his chances of getting a campfire going were better with 4 matchsticks than with none. With each step, the box rattled faintly in his trouser pocket. Tin also held the map. "If this thing is real," he said, as they passed the knotty oak and stepped over the tall grass toward the tree line, "then there's a path somewhere just on the other side of the stream." "Well," said Cole, "let's find out." They jumped the stream together and pressed in the foliage on the other side. A tingle went up Cole's spine. He grinned. "We're in the wildwood," he whispered. "Uncharted territory." "It's not uncharted," Tin whispered. "We're 20 feet away from where we hang out every day. And I am literally holding a chart." "Don't ruin this. You see a trail yet?" Tin gazed around the trees of mossy rocks and wildflowers. There were lots of things in the forest that were not a path. For just a moment he entertained the notion that there was no path, that the letter had been fake all along, and of course there was no secret trail, no imminent danger, no goblin horde. He was just beginning to look forward to a blissful morning of eating marmalade tarts in the safety of their climbing tree when his feet slid out from under him on a patch of dewy moss, sending him half falling, half hopping through a curtain of branches. His heart jumped as he regained his footing and looked around. "Whoa!" said Cole, joining him. Before them stretched a long, winding trail. It was a thin strip completed with needles and leaves, tall grasses and shrubs pressing in on it from either side. Unlike the straight, neat paths in town, this one wove in and out along the forest floor, skirting roots and boulders in wavy zigzag. "It looks like an animal path," said Cole. "Maybe deer?" "Maybe." Tin glanced down at the paper in his hands. "It's in the right place for the goblin trail, though." Cole's whole body tingled. He looked at Tin. Tin felt slightly numb. He nodded to Cole. Frankly, Cole thought, as the sun climbed higher and higher in the sky, he had expected the mysterious goblin trail to be slightly more mysterious and decidedly more goblin-y. It had been hours, and there had been no sign of eldritch talesmen hung from tree branches or strange statues half buried in the ground to mark their way. They had followed the meandering forest path for miles as it climbed quiet hills, dipped through shady valleys, and crossed burbling creeks. The path grew so thin in places they had lost it once or twice, but with the help of the map, they had managed to pick it up again each time. Cole used his pocket knife to carve a jagged C into the bark of nearby trees from time to time, in case they got lost and had to find their way back, and also because it helped to break up the plodding journey. The wildwood was not as wild as the name implied, but it was certainly alive. There was a steady buzz of insects and a clamor of birds chirping and cawing incessantly. The boys caught sight of a doe in the thicket, although it bolted the moment it heard them coming, and Cole spotted a family of squirrels racing along the branches. Tin paused at a tree raked with claw marks. "You think there are mountain lions out there?" he asked. "I don't think so," said Cole. "There aren't any mountains out here. More like hill lions, maybe. I'm hungry. Are you hungry?" "I bet there are," said Tin. "Cougars and wolves and all sorts of things." His chest felt tight. Was it his imagination, or was the air thicker in this part of the forest? He hadn't noticed it before, but a fine mist was drifting between the trees, winding and twisting around their roots. He peered at the map again, until he found a scribble that bore a passing resemblance to a boulder up ahead. If he was right, then the Oddmire was very close. The Goblin Crossing would be nearby. "Let's take a break," Cole said. "It's basically lunchtime. You want a tart?" He sat down on a mossy log and began to fiddle with the knot in the dish towel bundle. "Hold on. Do you hear something?" Tin said. He strained his ears. He could have sworn he heard a voice. Cole paused to listen. In the distance, there was a quiet splashing and piteous mewling. "Is that a person or an animal?" The boys traded a wary glance. Cole pushed himself up. Neither one of them spoke as they stepped off the goblin path. The fog grew thicker with each step they took, and the ground grew softer. They followed the sound of the wailing farther into the forest until the trees opened onto a wide, marshy swamp. "I guess we found the Oddmire," Tin said. "Whew, that's a stink. It smells like armpits and wet possum." "Look!" Cole pointed. 10 feet out, an animal was struggling to keep its head above the muck. It was not a large creature. It was brown or black from the look of it, although it was hard to tell with the slime of the mire all over it. The beast's desperate cries increased at the sight of the boys. Cole took a step closer and immediately sank one leg up to his ankle on the swampy peat. He pulled back with a wet, sucking sound. How did that critter even get that far? The thick roots of a tree beside them wound into the muck like a heavy rope, weaving in and out until it reached a small, damp island just a few feet away from the trapped creature. "Oh, along here," Tin said. He tucked the map into his pocket and took slow steps out along the slimy roots, balancing as best he could above the stagnant water until he was as close as he could get to the pitiful creature. "I think it's a cub," he called back to Cole. "A bear cub. I'll see if I can grab it." "Careful!" Cole called. The cub redoubled its efforts as Tin reached for it, but he was too far away and the cub's thrashing only churned up the slime, nearly sending it under. "I can't reach it," said Tin. Cole looked around until he found a sturdy fallen branch. It was soft with rot, but at least it was as thick, and it didn't crumble to pieces when he banged it experimentally against a tree trunk. "Here, try this." He edged out to his brother, treading unsteadily onto the roots, which sank farther under their combined weight until both boys' boots were completely buried. When he was within reach, Cole passed the branch to Tin. Tin eased it toward the frightened cub. The little bear pawed desperately at the branch a few times before catching hold, and then eagerly sank its claws into the wood and pulled. Tin was nearly hauled face first into the mire, but Cole caught his hand. Together they pulled the cub back to shore, inch by grueling inch, the thick stew of peat and plants and filthy water tugging back at them every step of the way. When they finally deposited the bear cub on solid ground, it shook itself like a wet dog, spraying the grass and the trees and the boys and everything else in a 10-foot radius with slime and mud before collapsing. Tin chuckled and wiped the mess from his face. "You're welcome," he told the cub. Cole traded his dish towel bundle from one hand to the other. As he wiped his palms off on his shirt, his pant legs were soaked up to the knees. "I guess no good deed goes He froze. The color drained from his face. "What?" Tin turned around in time to watch the broad, dark shadow behind him rise up on 2 muscular, hairy legs. It was a mountain of a heavy brown fur with jet black nose, black lips peeling back over the long, sharp fangs of the most enormous animal the twins had ever seen. For a moment, neither of them dared so much as blink. The bear looked down at the damp, motionless cub lying in the heap between the two boys, and then its furry chest swelled as it took a long breath. It roared. The bear bellowed a deep, booming, bone-rattling roar that Tin and Cole felt in the pits of their stomachs. The noise echoed inside them, rattling those nerves typically reserved for falling blindly backward or waking from a nightmare. The boys did not fall over backward or wake from anything. The boys ran. And that's the end of chapter 7. I wanted to end this chapter with something from the company Your True Nature, Advice From, because this one is a bookmark, Advice from a Woodland. And it says, find your own path, start from the ground up, stretch your limbs, branch out, root for others, make room for new ground, recycle, recycle, recycle. And I thought that was kind of cool in that we're reading about a woodland, and it's some good advice for the times that we're going through right now. Take good care.